Good morning. We welcome all of you to our session today, and we hope that you enjoyed the earlier keynote message. We are from the Barr Center. My name is Brian Fleming. I serve the Barr Center as the Associate Director for our Network for School Improvement. I want to thank you for joining us this morning to learn more about Barr, our research, and how our use of improvement science principles fueled through the intentional use and leveraging of relationships and data create success for students furthest from opportunity and equitable outcomes within school districts. As you enter the chat room, we'd love for you to update your name, first name followed by your organization. And then in the chat box, if you would please, tell us what the temperature is where you are today. So if you're in Chicago, New York, Seattle, Dallas, let us know what the temperature is where you're at. Thank you for your responses. It's fun to see what's happening in different parts of the country.
My eye hurts.
Yeah.
On the back.
We'll take about another 20 seconds and then we'll move to our next slide. Thank you. As I said, my name is Brian Fleming, and I am the Associate Director for the Barr Network for School Improvement. Joining us today are three colleagues from the Barr Center, Anu Sharma, Christina Ritter, and Amber Bohack, who serves in one of our anchor schools in California as the Barr coordinator. I'm going to turn it over now to Anu, and then Christina and Amber, who will introduce themselves.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anu Sharma, and I am a senior research scientist at the Barr Center. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I'm very delighted to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina Ritter, the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives at Barr. And welcome, everyone. And I live in Amarillo, Texas, and I'm going to pass it on to Amber.
Hi, my name is Amber Bohack, and I am the Barr coordinator at West Valley High School, which is in Hemet, California, which is in Southern California, about an hour and a half from Los Angeles. Very excited to be here and speak with you guys today. And back to Brian.
Thank you, Anu, Christina, and Amber. Before we move to the next slide, I just want to let everyone know that we do have our NSI project lead, Hannah Scherer, monitoring our chat box today. And so we'll be monitoring the conversation throughout our time together. We'd love to hear from you and engage with you. So don't be shy. And if you have comments or questions or ideas that come up throughout the presentation, please do know that we will be monitoring that and responding accordingly. So today we want to push you and hopefully inspire you to leverage qualitative data differently, especially when we think about the importance of capturing student voice and leveraging that student voice in continuous improvement iterations. I noted that the topic of the session, this convening, is from return and recuperation to reckoning and reimagination in education. So I thought I would continue that alliteration and perhaps throw in for today's session a return and recuperation to reckoning and reimagination through relationships in education. We know that in these turbulent times that we are just starting to pull out of due to the pandemic, it's especially important to think about the challenges of unfinished learning, and especially the implications for many of our Black, Latinx, and low-income students. For these students, the research shows, and we know, that fostering and sustaining relationships is key to their sense of agency and belonging. The BAR network is some 180 schools wide, spanning across a timeline of about 22 years. We have impacted more than 100,000 students since our inception. The NSI network, and those states are illuminated in green on the map that you see there. The NSI network consists of 23 school districts across 30 schools across 3 states. Our aim, our specific aim as a network for school improvement is to work diligently with 30 high schools in Illinois, Minnesota, and California over the course of 5 years to leverage CI methods that will improve college ready on track measures for Black, Latinx, and low-income students. For those of you who are not familiar with BAR, BAR is a 3-year training and coaching model predicated on 2 fundamental and primary pillars: building positive intentional relationships and using real-time student data to help inform and shape collaborative problem solving. The premise at BAR is really quite simple. We believe that the talent that resides within a school, when it's harnessed and organized around these core principles or pillars, relationships and data, will garner better results with students and teachers. BAR is a systemic disruption model that uses continuous improvement to address and mitigate gaps. We address the gap by building unity, awareness, and disagreement without disunion. Key themes for us that are the thread through line throughout our work are high rigor, addressing and achieving equity, honoring student voice, staff voice, and the belief that students engage more when caring adults endeavor to know them. Our data and research have always been our true north in terms of strategic growth and model refinement, and this level of rigor has opened doors for private and public funding to scale. We're proud to be the most researched school improvement model, and our research efforts and results constantly remind us just how important it is to build and sustain relationships. BAR focuses on a trio of relationships, and we'll talk about one of those today: staff to staff, staff to student, and student to student. For today's conversation, we want to focus on staff to student and student to staff. We want to highlight the many ways to capture the meaningfulness of reciprocal mutual relationships, and then suggest some ways that you all can leverage student voice as a way to inform your continuous improvement. So at this time, I'm happy to introduce my friend and colleague, Anu Sharma, who has been part of the evaluation and research team since the beginning of BAR several years ago. Anu?
Thank you, Brian. You know, I realize that we never told you what BAR stands for. It is Building Assets, Reducing Risks. And that's our name. Our tagline is same students, same teachers, different results. And so we really do emphasize working with the population that's in the school at the time that we come in. But I want to reiterate what Brian said earlier, and that is that we want to focus today on lifting up student voice as an integral part of our data and measurement process. But we also want to, just for 2 or 3 minutes, ground you in our research so that you know when we highlight one aspect of our data, that it's surrounded by something that's bigger. So here at a glance is our research. We've conducted 12 within school randomized control trials in Minnesota, California, Maine, Kentucky, and Texas. And that means that we've tested the model on both coasts, in the Midwest, in the Southwest, and Appalachia. In fact, our executive director is in West Virginia today, in the heart of Appalachia. And these 12 randomized control trials, I have to say that one of the people who spearheaded one of these 12 within school randomized control trials, you're going to hear from later, Amber Bohack. She introduced herself earlier, but West Valley, where she works, was one of our randomized control trial sites. And we are indebted to the schools that have done that kind of work. It is not easy, as Amber will attest, to do an RCT in a school, a within school RCT. And we're so grateful to all the students and teachers. So speaking of students and teachers, 4,700 plus ninth grade students, 149 teachers participated in these studies. And the measures that we looked at, oh, I should also say that the vast majority of students in these schools were students of color and in poverty. They were randomly assigned to 1 year of bar or business as usual. And the measures that we looked at, which is where I was going, to see if bar students outperformed control students were the ones on this slide: credits earned, passing courses, standardized test scores, and student and teacher perceptions. Down below on the bottom of this slide are, we just loosely call them validators. These are organizations that have tested or reviewed our work and have in some way, shape, or form endorsed it. The next slide, I think, really gets into our black box. People ask us, okay, how does BAR achieve all the asterisks that you're going to see down below what we call our mediation analysis? These are 19 statistically significant impacts that BAR has achieved. And I think the most impressive are on the right side, the academic outcomes. Students get higher graduation rates, improved math and reading scores. They are getting more credits earned, and they pass courses at higher rates. But how does BAR do this? So AIR, the American Institutes of Research, they evaluated our randomized controlled trials, and they conducted this mediation analysis. And I want to say also that Hans Bose, who was the principal investigator at AIR, he said that it's very rare that a theory of change holds up under actual empirical analysis, and ours did. And we were very, very pleased with that. But this is how BAR works. It gets results by working with teachers to change their attitudes. They feel increased self-efficacy. They believe they can actually facilitate positive strength-based changes in their students. They feel supported by administrators, and then they in turn change their own behaviors. You see enhanced collaboration, better use of data, and lo and behold, positive intentional relationships with students. And as a result, moving down the line, student attitudes change. Students feel more supported, they feel that more is expected of them, and they feel more engaged in and excited about school. Then they change their behaviors. They show up more, they have fewer issues and better social emotional skills. And finally, we get those academic outcomes, which are the prizes at the end of all this hard work. And I've already gone into them. I just want to say one thing, that when we presented this mediation analysis to a superintendent, he actually said, you know, this is really interesting. He said, I always used to start at the right side. If I wanted to change math scores, I started with a math curriculum. But he said now, after doing BAR for 4 or 5 years, or however many he had been engaged in the model at that time, he said, I always start on the left side of the diagram. I start with teacher attitudes. And you know what? It works a lot better. And it may sound simple, but it's hard to do, and it goes against almost all current practice. I think we're I don't know, we're trained or we're habitualized, or whatever the right word is, but we tend to start on the right side, and I think we should start more on the left. So I want to share a question that my coworker, who's going to present next, talked about when we were preparing for this presentation. Christina said, you know, as we were thinking about what we were going to say today, she said, we've become accustomed to measurement, but how do we leverage what we learn from and about students? Leveraging the data is really important. So I'm going to turn it over to her now, and I think she's going to talk about how exactly we do that, and then you're going to hear from one of our schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Anu. As Anu said, our salient question today is, how do we use measurement to learn from and about our students? And in this process of measurements, you know, we need data. So how do we collect? When do we collect? All of those questions are driven by what we want to know and what we want to act upon based upon who we wish to impact. In our case, as well as yours, our goal is to positively impact our students with academics, behavior, and social emotional skills. So in BAR, we collect student voice within the SEL moment. And in order to capture this data accurately, we must first create the appropriate conditions. In BAR, the teacher is the facilitator, not the instructor, and we want the lesson modeled and facilitated so that students feel the freedom to speak up. These lessons, which we call I time in the secondary and U time in elementary, occur weekly and are facilitated by core content teachers. This real-time qualitative data is gathered by the teachers and then taken back to a weekly meeting structure called a block meeting. In BAR schools, we feel it's important for content teachers to deliver the lessons rather than a counselor or a specialist within the school. This gives our teachers the opportunity and the resources to form relationships with their students. As Brian mentioned earlier, our BAR is predicated on 2 pillars: real-time data and positive intentional relationships. On the next slide, how do we then take everything that we are learning within the SEL moment that we're hearing about a student? How do we take what we have learned about the student and then leverage it? In most schools, we're good at the plan, do, and study, plan, do, and act portion of the PDSA cycle. However, if we're to become better at the S, or the study of the continuous improvement cycle, we know that educators need the time. So then what are we going to do? How are we going to ensure that teachers have the adequate time to discuss students collaboratively and within the school day? So if we know we value time, then how do we plan for that in our school day? And as you're going to see on the next slide, BAR helps the school organize and use their time differently. What you see on this slide is what a week in BAR looks like. And we know, as a former high school principal, elementary principal, I know that how we structure the school day is important. I would often say, show me your master schedule and I'll tell you what you value. So if we say we value student voice, if we say we value teacher collaboration, then we have to organize our day to allow for those things to occur. On the left side of the slide in front of you, in BAR schools, educators, part of the component of a weekly component is the I time lesson I referred to earlier. So we want to have time within the school day, within the school week, for us to be in relationship with our students. So we have the I time or SEL curriculum. We also want time within the week for teachers to come together to collaboratively problem solve with their colleagues, analyze the real-time data, and then use this data to build and strengthen relationships with the students and one another. And you see those structures, we refer to them as a small block and big block meeting. And those are the second and third picture. And we use this time for teachers to sit down together. They have a structured way, they have conversations about students, and then they're also making sure to take the data they're learning, quantitative and qualitative data, develop student goals, and then create and define appropriate interventions for the students. And we talk about every student, the thriving student, as well as the student who's in need of more intense intervention. Lastly, we have on the far right, we have our risk review meeting. And this is for students that require more intense intervention and the use of community resources. We know that schools do not operate in isolation and are part of a larger community. And we want to tap into those resources to help our students overcome any obstacles or barriers that are getting in the way of their success. So what I'd like to do next with you guys, if you will indulge me, is I'd like for you to participate in one of our SEL lessons called What's on Your Plate. This I time lesson is from one of our volumes. We have 3 volumes of lessons, and this is from session 22. So for this activity, what we're wanting to gather as the teacher facilitator of this is more information about our students' lives and any potential stressors that may be impacting their lives. So for this activity, we'd love for you to participate. Just grab a piece of paper nearby. It doesn't have to be a great piece of paper, just any paper. I'll give you a couple of seconds to grab a piece of paper. For those of you who already have the paper in front of you, we'd like for you to draw a circle on it. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, but the circle roughly the size of a dinner plate. And then what we'd like for you to do is to section it into the 4 sections that you see on the screen: activities, interest, responsibilities, and miscellaneous. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that. I really would push you to participate in this. You know, oftentimes as educators, we can develop and create lessons, but oftentimes we're not participatory in them because they usually fall upon the student. So I'm going to really ask that you indulge us and that you step outside of your comfort zone and participate in this lesson, much like we would expect our students to do. While you have your plate in front of you, what I'd like for you to consider is jotting down a couple of items within each of those quadrants. So for instance, in activities, I may on my plate jot down that I love to cook, that I love to get better at, and I'm cooking and trying to get better. My interests may include, I really love to read. I would put down the book that I'm in the process of reading right now. In the responsibilities section, I would put my job. My job is the Associate Director of BAR, but I'm also a wife and a mother of 2 college-age students. So I may write down my responsibilities there. And miscellaneous, I may put down random bike rides, random walks. I'd love to get into master gardening. So things that are miscellaneous that don't fit in the other categories. In a nighttime lesson, it's important for the teacher to act as facilitator. So I would have a plate in front of me, model this activity, and tell you what's on my plate in a professional way so students understand and know a little bit more about me. In a few minutes, in a few seconds rather, we're going to launch you into a breakout room where you are going to be with a couple of other folks from the session, and you're going to share what is on your plate. Our goal is, 1, for you to be able to see if there are any commonalities among you and the people in your breakout session. And 2, to develop the skill of speaking to others that you may not know well or not at all. You're going to be in your breakout room for a total of 6 minutes, which gives you an average time of a couple of minutes per person to speak. And I would push you to ask each other questions about what's on your plate and what you feel comfortable sharing. At this time, I would love for you guys to be launched into your 6-minute breakout session, and we'll see you back soon. Welcome back. I see people are hopping back on. Thank you. We're just going to give everyone a few seconds to reacclimate to coming back into the main session. We're also just going to give you a few seconds to sit in this activity and think about what you heard from your colleagues. So as you come back, Hannah has posed a question in the chat box. What were some of the commonalities you saw? We would love to hear your voice or read your voice in the chat box, but what were some things you had in common with people in your breakout room? I know it takes time to type in your response. As you're thinking about what you had in common, one of the pieces that if we were to hold these people, hold this in person or with our students virtually, exactly what I'm seeing in the chat box right now. We talked about the portion size of responsibilities crowding out everything else. We would, as the students are discussing, we would help them within the conversation by offering them additional questions. We would say to them, talk to your partner, your team, your member, your group members about what are the things they enjoy the most, what takes the most time, what would you like to spend more time doing, what drains most of your energy, what energizes you more on your plate, what is the thing that when you see it, you're all about it. And what is something on your plate you can do without? And we help them negotiate what that looks like for them. But it's really important if I'm a teacher in there and I'm walking around and listening as they're participating with their students, the other students in class, I am listening for, does this person have a job? Does this person, are they responsible for siblings in their home? Is this person maybe has an elderly a grandparent that they are caring for after school? I am listening for, the person really is motivated by participating in band. This person really likes the responsibility outside of school of having a job because they chose to do it. All of the information would be really important for me to bring back to the larger team that would aid in us getting a better understanding of what the student is involved in, what they're responsible for, and any potential stressor in their life that maybe cause maybe a barrier that we can't help remove it, but we can help them learn how to deal with that barrier. I also see in here that said, I see that Hannah is responding to it, but I love that you're engaging this, because this is what we want to know and hear about our students, that qualitative qualitative information that comes directly from the student. And that is very important for us to consider in how we talk about and the data that we use regarding our students that we serve. I thank you very much for participating in one of our SEL lessons. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Amber.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today. So just as a review, my name is Amber Bohack, and I am the bar coordinator at a school called West Valley High School in Southern California in Hemet. Just a little background on my school. We have roughly 1,800 students. We run bar in the 9th grade currently. We are about 62% Hispanic, about 12 to 14% African American, and about 22% Caucasian. And we are 100% free and reduced lunch. We do live in a very challenging town. And so this bar program has really helped us to support our students. This is our 7th year running the bar program, and we have seen tremendous results. So my focus today is to talk to you about how relationships look through a year in the life of bar, and how those relationships are also shown through data. I'm going to challenge you to think of data differently. We tend to look at data through, percentages and graphs and things like that. And I'm going to challenge you to look at data a little bit differently than normal. All right, so I'm going to show you this pathway. This is basically what relationships look like at our school throughout the school year. Our relationships are constant, they are rich, they are always changing, and they provide us with so much data and leverage. And that leverage, again, is used to help support our students. So to start, before school even starts, we do our middle school meetings. In fact, I just did them last week for our next year's incoming 9th graders. So what we do is we actually meet with our middle school counselors and our PBIS specialists in the middle school. And we are able to learn before the students even step foot on our site, what challenges these 9th graders may be going through, what difficulties are in place for them. And the great thing about this is, back to relationships, we've developed relationships with the middle school counselors. So there's a trust. They trust us to take this information, keep it confidential, but also to put into place supports for their 8th graders, our 9th graders, as they come into high school and make that huge transition in their lives. So there's that trust. Because we learn so much about these incoming 9th graders prior to them starting the school year, we're able to put in small groups, individual therapy, counseling, support groups, whatever it may be for these students. So for example, this past year with COVID, we had a lot of students who suffered grief and loss. They lost someone in their family, either due to COVID, they may have lost a home, a job, they suffered some kind of a loss. And so we already have a grief and loss group set up for next year's 9th graders based on the information we got from the middle school counselors. We also learned things about their strengths, who would be fantastic as a football player, who should be a leader on campus. And so we're able to put students strategically in classrooms based on what we know about them from these middle school counselors. So that first set of relationships to start our year is incredibly important to the success of our students. Once school starts, about 2 to 3 weeks in, we give our ninth graders a questionnaire. And from the questionnaire, we learn so much information about our students. They tell us basically what supports they would like because of different obstacles they may be facing in their lives. Some may say that they would like to have help with organization, transitioning into high school. Maybe it's substance use, maybe it's self-harm, depression, whatever it happens to be, they're able to self-identify. And based on that questionnaire, we learn a lot from them. The other great thing about this questionnaire is based on the responses we get, we may tailor our I-times, like Christina talked about the SEL activities, we may tailor those. So for example, if a lot of kids are saying that they're anxious right now, we may pull an I-time on anxiety, and we may have the teachers teach that very early on in the school year because we know our kids are suffering through that right now. The other thing is, again, trust, back to those relationships. I have a fantastic team. I have a counselor and I have an MHP, a mental health provider, who work on our BAR team. And based on the student responses, we know that one of the three of us will be contacting every single student who checked anything on that questionnaire to do a follow-up with them. And so the students have a sense of trust that we are going to follow up, and then our team has a sense of trust that we're going to make sure that we talk to all of these students and support them. The third relationship that happens throughout the school year is with administrators. It's so important that we're able to be in communication with administration. I'm able to sit down as BAR coordinator with my assistant principal who oversees the master schedule, and we're able to talk about BAR. And as Christina mentioned earlier, you can tell what you value about your school based on the master schedule. Well, I can tell you right now that the BAR classes get put onto the master schedule first. That's how much BAR is valued in our school and in our district. The great thing about this meeting is that I'm able to talk to the assistant principal about what worked this year, looking at the data of the grades, the attendance, the teacher dynamic, all that data stuff. What worked, what didn't work, and how can next year we improve it so that we're constantly trying to make this the best program possible. And so those discussions are incredibly important. The last thing we do throughout the school year is our transfer of care meeting. And this is similar to the middle school meeting where the 8th grade counselors give us information on our incoming 9th graders, but now we're transferring care of our current 9th graders to our 10th grade counselors and mental health therapists. And this way, we don't just kind of leave those students who have had all these supports all year long. They are passed on and they are continued with support in their 10th grade year. And again, there's that trust that I know that those 10th grade counselors are going to meet with these students early on next school year, and they're going to support them based on what information we've given them. This is really helpful because they don't have to figure out the information and relearn about these students, on their own. We're able to pass on information so that it's like a seamless transfer of care. And so it's pretty amazing that these meetings can take place. So those are the 4 things that kind of happen throughout the year. These next set of items are things that happen all the time. So for example, we have our I-time that Christina talked about earlier. I-time happens weekly, and the math, science, and English teacher for us switch every single week who's teaching the lesson. So it's pretty amazing that you're able to get a social emotional lesson from your math teacher or your science teacher or your English teacher, and get to know the teacher on a different level, but also get to know the kids on a different level. So the first major thing that we get from these I-times is we learn about students. We get that data. And again, that data is not, numbers per se. It's more qualitative. It's more hearing things or seeing things or paying attention to things in the classroom. So for example, on that, what's on your plate I-time, if a lot of students have all these responsibilities, well, maybe the teacher can do a quick lesson on how to manage responsibilities and how to make sure that you're balancing that plate. And so that information can also be taken back to the team. I've seen teachers, collect the plates and keep them like in a drawer so they can refer to them throughout the school year. So learning about students is number 1 with I-time, but also who's participating in the I-times and who's not. Maybe the student who always answers the math question doesn't participate in the I-time. That's data. Or maybe the student who has straight Fs loves I-time. That's, again, data. We also modify our teaching practices based on the information that we learn from the students. So again, if students are anxious or they're feeling a certain way, the teacher can kind of tweak how they run things in their classroom, and again, share that information with the rest of the team so that we can continually help these students. From iTime, we also refer to support sometimes. If a student is really struggling with an iTime, maybe they just suffered a loss in their family or something's going on, then we can refer that student to the support staff as well. The other great thing about iTimes is we use the previous year's iTime data to inform us on what to do the following year. For example, our very first year of BAR, there's a grief and loss iTime. It happens in second semester later on in the school year when there's more, they're more comfortable with each other. But the first year we did it, we had the teacher teach it. He was a biology teacher. He was fantastic. But kids were crying. They were upset because they were being reminded of loss that they had in their lives. And so he communicated that with us. So the following year, we made sure the counselor was in that room during the iTime. So again, always learning data, always taking that information and making things better for students. Moving on to parent meetings, again, also ongoing. These are relationships with parents or guardians. And we learn so much from those meetings. Sometimes we learn awesome things, and sometimes we learn not so great things. Maybe the parent isn't as supportive as we would like. But again, it's still information, it's still data. And we're able to leverage strengths through these meetings and make sure that the parent and student leaves with a plan of action that we have them sign and take with them. But again, relationships are constantly being formed in these meetings as well. Admin communication, this one is really important. This has been huge for our school. I actually sit in on an admin meeting once a week, and I have an assistant principal who oversees the BAR program at my site, and so I also talk with her a lot. But based on what we've learned in BAR over the last 7 years, we have made so many systemic changes. I know Brian referred to it as systemic disruption, which I love. But for example, grading practices. We are constantly looking at students and their grades in classes and the grade books and the assignments and the categories. And based on what we've seen with these 9th graders and their grade books, we've actually had school-wide 9th through 12th grade discussions on grade book practices. And should we have grading categories that are weighted? What does it look like when only one assignment's put in that category? And because of these discussions, we actually have our district has brought on Dr. Douglas Reeves as a consultant who's helping us navigate the gradebook issue. And it's happening now K through 12. And so that has been an amazing addition. And I really do feel like it's come from the BAR program and what we've learned about these different systemic issues that we see through the data. We've also branched out and done iTimes school-wide. It used to just be a 9th grade thing. And now we have 10th through 12th grade teachers saying, hey, can we take some of these iTimes? Can we teach them? And so now, especially this year with COVID, we pushed out iTimes weekly to our upper class teachers as well, so that there was an SEL component for all students. We're also discussing doing an athletic risk review next year, which we would have athletes that we talked about who maybe were struggling and bring on their coaches and support staff to help them be successful. So really with these admin discussions and this communication, it really has kind of branched out through this whole entire school. And then obviously we also talk about celebrations, what's going well, what teachers are doing awesome lessons so that admin can celebrate them, which kids are doing great. So there's a lot that comes out of those conversations. The next thing we do is action plans. Action plans are basically when our 3 BAR teachers meet with a student, just them with the student, and they really have a conversation about what specifically can that student do to improve. And we talk about strengths and goals and a plan of action that the kid signs at the end. But again, there's just that trust of relationships that the team is going to make that student feel welcome and supported, and then carry out on their role after it's done. What are their to-dos? How are they going to follow up with the student? And then the last thing I wanted to discuss is just teacher support. Very important component to what we do. Teachers also need love. And so it's my job as the coordinators to support them, to read the room. If we're having a meeting and I can tell that teachers are feeling down or they have a lot on their plate or whatever may be going on, I'm able to kind of tweak my meetings or change topics or do a motivational thing and really help the teachers feel like they're valued because they are the heart of this. You know, they are the ones in the classrooms with these students. We also share best practices during our team meetings, but it's just ongoing support that I have developed with my teachers as a relationship as well. So again, looking at this pathway, relationships, they happen all the time, and they're just so pivotal to this program. And I wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what they look like through BAR in the year of a school year. So how can all this happen? The answer is more relationships. We are very, very lucky in Hemet Unified. We have amazing district level support. We actually have 4 high schools in our district, and all 4 high schools have the BAR program on their campuses. We have a director who oversees the BAR program, among other things. We have a teacher on special assignment who also supports us. She actually attends some of our meetings to offer like an outside perspective. We are moving to next year also having BAR at one of our middle schools to kind of see how that works. We do monthly PLC meetings where all the coordinators and counselors and mental health providers get together and we talk about how can we make this even better? What can we do? What are some ideas? And so those are really helpful. And again, relationships are being formed to help students. Obviously, we're also part of the NSI network. In addition to that work, we are also doing our own PDSA cycle starting next year as a 4 coordinator group of the 4 high schools. So we're also going to be trying to try new things. We're always trying to lower the failure rate and help students be successful to graduate on time. So we're going to also implement that next year. And then I think it's really important to know that BAR is interwoven into our school. I always tell people it's just how we do business. I have had 3 principals in my 7 years of doing BAR, and I have had probably 5 APs oversee my program, and the BAR has not been affected negatively one bit. It's because it's just how we do business. And based on the relationships that we have with our district staff, we're able to continue the program no matter what the administration looks like. And to me, that is the true success of a program, is if it can continue on no matter who the leadership is. All right, I want to leave you with 3 stories. And I'm going to try not to tear up because I always do with these stories. So if I do, I apologize. Just give me a second. But I want to really focus on how do we measure the immeasurable. I always thought data was numbers, percentages, graphs, pie charts, things like that. And being at the BAR coordinator these last 7 years, I have learned a lot about what data actually looks like and how we can measure the immeasurable through the lens of relationships. So my first story is titled, Data Doesn't Always Present Itself When We Want It to. So I had a student, my very first year of BAR, his name was Johnny. And in Johnny's freshman year, he did everything you can think a typical freshman would do that was inappropriate. He was blowing spit wads at his English teacher when her back was turned. He had 6 Fs, he ditched, he used substances, you name it, he did it. And I had him in my office like probably twice a day, talking to him about making good decisions and all this stuff. And at the end of his freshman year, he still had 6 Fs, he still was getting in trouble, he still had attendance issues. And in my mind, I thought, well, the data didn't work this year, what's going on? So fast forward to his senior year, he walks into my office and he has the biggest smile on his face. And I'm like, Johnny, what's going on? And he has a certificate, and he's received a senior award at the senior awards night, which is a hard thing to do. And he's just so excited. And we start talking, he sits down and he is on track to graduate. He was on the cross-country team for a couple of years. He's going into the military. Like, the data was like, oh my gosh, this kid's amazing. But it's important to know that data doesn't always present itself when we think it should. For this student, it took him 4 years, but the data was amazing. My second story is we may never see the fruits or the data of our labor. We had another student a couple of years back named David, and I kid you not, if you look in our school system, you will find over 300 interventions listed in our school system for this student, not to mention suspensions, almost an expulsion. I mean, daily it was something with this student. Actually, it was more like every period it was something with this student. He had a lot of challenges in his life, his home life. And that year, we never saw any positive change. And I don't know where he ended up. So we may not ever see the data, but someone else will. And it's important for us to remember that. This last story, a BAR coordinator learns an important lesson about data, and that BAR coordinator would be me. This was a pivotal change in my life as an educator, was when this happened. Again, it was our first year of BAR, and we were running our risk review team. And our risk review, just as a quick review, is the students who are considered level 3 on campus because of different challenges they're experiencing, whether it be family life, social economic, academics, attendance, behavior, substance use, mental health, depression, any of those things could land them on risk review. And we had a student named Brittany, and she started the year with us. She was in a group home, and she was failing everything, like 1%, 2%, like failing everything miserably, eloping from class. And we also found out that she was self-harming. So she was self-injuring during the day, at home, you name it, she was self-injuring. And so we put all these interventions in place. The mental health provider was meeting with her weekly. We gave her a great schedule. We showed her what tutoring looked like. All these different things happened. And 6 weeks later, we went to review her, Brittany, and see kind of how things were going. And I have my system up on my computer screen. And once again, there's 6F, she's eloping from school. She's still a behavior problem. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. What's going on? And at that moment, our therapist turned to me and said, but Amber, she hasn't cut herself in over 3 weeks. She hasn't self-injured. And it like shocked me to my core that this was data that was so powerful, but that I had been missing in my 9 years previous as an English teacher. And so this moment forever shaped the way I look at data. Data doesn't always, look like a percentage or a graph. It's made me look at every single student differently. And now I see them as a whole child and not just, certain aspects. I just feel like it's important to realize that data can take the shape of many different things, not just numbers. And sometimes data truly is feelings, it's stories, it's emotions. So I really want to thank you for letting me share just a glimpse in the life of the BAR program at West Valley High School. It's been an honor to share about my amazing and rewarding experience that BAR has given me. And I really just thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Brian for some reflection.
Thank you, Amber, so much for that just wonderful journey through BAR, highlighting the myriad ways that we can leverage, think about, and learn from the relationships that we foster and sustain in our schools. At this time, we want to hold space for a few minutes, maybe 8 to 10 minutes or so, and we want to give you the opportunity to think about and perhaps share out at least 2 questions or prompts. The first prompt being, what internal mind shift occurred for you today throughout the course of our time together? And or is there something that you might be able to take away from this presentation, some new learning, some new aha that you would be able to apply to your work in your schools when students return in the fall? And now we'll move to breakouts. Welcome back, folks. We look forward to hearing about your time together. As you're coming back, if you would like to put into the chat a takeaway or a nugget or an aha that came up for you in your time with your breakout partners, that would be great. This is also a good time if you'd like to pose a question or comment to any member of our team. We'd love to see those and respond accordingly. We'll hold for about another 30 seconds or so before we wrap up for the day. Give some time back to you.
a question from Jenny in the chat about, are there any other lessons that you share publicly that are publicly available?
Christina?
Yes, I was waiting to see if it's someone else joined in. Yes, if you go to the website that Hannah, or also on here, the barcenter.org, we have complimentary resources, and we also offer another iTime lesson called What Rainbow in the Clouds. It's a lesson our students and our teachers really enjoy, and it's a lesson you can also do staff to staff. So we welcome you to go to that website and get that complimentary resource.
Great, thank you, Christina.
And Hannah just posted it also in the chat box.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina and Hannah. Well, thank you, everyone. On behalf of the BAR team, we hope that as you continue to return, recuperate, reckon, and reimagine what teaching and learning will look like and perhaps feel like in the fall as students and colleagues are coming back, we really hope that you'll give some weight to how fostering, sustaining, and leveraging relationships can bring about some personal and systemic shifts. You see our email address is here. We would love to hear from you if you have follow-up thoughts or questions or ideas. And I will now hand it off to Corey, who will share next steps.
Great. Thank you all so much. It was really lovely having you all here, and I certainly appreciated the personal nature of this conversation. I'm excited to see all of you thinking about how to integrate some of this into your own work. We are going to give a break now, and we will start back at 20 after the hour. So 11:20 if you're on the West Coast, 2:20 if you're on the East Coast. In your second set of breakout sessions, you can go back into the Attendee Hub and click that link to join. Please do be there on time so that we make sure we have everybody ready to go. Thank you all so much.